The Game Schooler Podcast is a weekly audio show that educates new and experienced gamers about the awesomeness of tabletop gaming. In this week's episode, we'll cover Knarr, our game of the week, discuss our gaming New Year resolutions in the School of Gaming, and wrap it up by revealing our top 10 games of 2024. Welcome to the Game Schooler Podcast. I'm your host, Doug Kotecki, along with my co-host, Dr. Michael McCabe. How's it going, Michael?
What's happening, Doug? How are you? Welcome back. How was your break?
Pretty good. I was kind of worried that none of this equipment would work.
Oh, I know. I had one minor snafu, but you caught it, being the master producer. It might be your theater degree. Might just be that you're so used to me messing up that you have your own little checklist. You have your own little checklist. Is Michael connected through the FaceTime camera? Check. You're on the wrong camera. Is Michael's microphone on? Michael, you're still coming through your laptop. So,
we're fine now. We're
good now. We're good now. Appreciate it, Doug. All
right. Well, probably a ton to follow up on, but I tried to keep it brief. The first thing I wanted to talk about was I got a chance to play through the Exit Advent Calendar, the most recent one that came out.
The Hollywood one?
Correct, yes.
I got a chance to watch my wife and daughter play through it.
Okay, what did they think about it?
Oh my gosh, they loved it. They would do like 5 days at a time.
Okay.
Tell me about your experience, though.
Well, it's for anybody that's listened to the podcast for a long time knows I'm an unlock guy. And this is my first experience with the exit system. I did love the theming of the Hollywood theming and the different movies and things like that. I wish I had a better schedule of like, okay, I'm going to do this day and then the next day and do it like a real advent calendar and go, just do one thing a day. I was at the start of it, I was going to do it with my eldest daughter, and we were going to go day by day. And like we got 2 or 3 days in, and then it's December. So your schedule gets out of whack. And all of a sudden you're like,
your schedule gets out of whack. December's a busy month for families.
For some.
Oh my goodness.
And so then all of a sudden I'm like, we're 5 days behind. And then I'm trying to play catch up, which then makes me feel like I'm rushing through it. And then there were some things where it's like there were some puzzles that I enjoyed and some puzzles that I was like, I'm not sure how I was supposed to necessarily figure this out without like sitting there for 45 minutes. So I it's kind of a mixed bag. There was parts of it that I really enjoyed, but then other parts that just like, this is why I like the exit or the unlock system.
Sure.
I feel like it keeps it all kind of tidy in a thematic sense, and I felt like I enjoyed the hint system a little bit more in the unlock than this, but it was an interesting experience.
Yeah, and different games work for different folks, right? I cannot help myself when people I know are enjoying a game and then I just straight up bloviate on all the other games that design team has ever made.
Yes, so I've known that about you.
Yes, you do. And so I waited till they were done-ish. This was Christmas Day. They knocked out like 5 or 6 of the days, and they packed it all up, and they were having fun. They were in that after gamer glow of, this was a good game. This was a cool experience. And I just mentioned, same design team as Sausage Sizzle sitting over there. Inca and Marcus Brand, huh? Quite the talented duo to be able to make an exit system year after year and something that takes Yahtzee and makes it more fun. Nobody responded. In my house, it's not like where I have a podcast and even the hums and the hums that come back. But that was my family really enjoyed it. I'm not a huge escape room individual. Neither of those systems, I'll play them. I enjoy playing both of them, but it's just.
I think when you're talking about it there, and you said that they were doing like the last 5 in a row, it got to a point for me where it almost felt like work, and I couldn't like leave it. I had to finish it, and it's like I was not invested enough into it where it's like I feel like my time with it passed a long time before it was finished, but I felt like I needed to finish it, and then it was like, all right, let's finish this one. Puzzle, that type of thing. Which it's been a while since I've had an experience like that, and even I can't think of any legacy games that have had that experience where I felt like, oh God, we just got to finish this. And no, I've not felt that before, but there was a point where I'm like, I'm just doing this to get it done with, almost to say I did it, which was weird.
Yeah.
A weird experience.
But it's a lot, though, Doug. I mean, it's a month. It's a month of little mini puzzles. And what I'll say, I will continue to buy those for my family. They really enjoyed it. But, boy, I can also... Are you glad that you did, though? Are you glad that you just tried it out and now you've had that experience?
I had the experience. I'm glad that I've got a window into the exit system. I think...
You have probably an official micro badge somewhere you can go pick up that you completed
There
exit.
is a small award that came on it that my daughter has affixed to the refrigerator. So...
Good. I'd say it was well worth the purchase then.
Yeah, totally. That piece of cardboard was a delight. And kudos to the design team. That thing really broke down well for recycling. So no plastic bits in there. Everything folded over, nice and flat. And as a guy that hosted my entire family for Christmas, there was a lot of boxes and wrapping paper that I appreciated that the exit advent calendar folded flat to maximize my recycling space.
Doug will be putting things in his recycling bin through March for 2024, folks.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Yep.
How about some follow-up for you?
Yeah, only follow-up. If folks are watching us at home, I do apologize for my gnarly and not in a great way just appearance. I like to be more, a professional looking, but it's basketball season and I only shave on game days. I'm not superstitious. I just enjoy my rituals. So got a little bit of a Frodo neck beard going. Had a little bit between games. But then other follow-up, I am very excited for the year ahead. I have no idea where our podcast is going to go. I feel like our goals and our community is just, really awesome. And the Discord, it continues to be an incredible place to just drop in and see how people are doing. And I want to continue focusing on what's awesome in the hobby. I really do. That's my follow-up. The rest of it, I think we're going to get to in what's awesome with gaming. So
yeah, I've got one question I wanted to ask you. And we talked a little bit about this off air. And as this being our episode of our top 10 games of 2024, and I know that some folks on the Discord have been consuming all of the top 10s and 20s and 100s of the year that come out at this time of year, doing exactly what we're doing of top 10 lists of favorite games that came out in 2024. I was surprised, and I want your feedback on this. I was surprised on the number of top 10 lists that I saw or watched or listened to of people that I follow, and I'm not going to say names, but people that I follow regularly throughout the year, that I noticed that there were a bunch of games missing from their list that they hyped up immensely throughout the year that I could have guaranteed that I thought that they would be on the list. And so that idea of like, oh, this is a great game in March, and everybody's talking about it, and it's the latest and greatest, best game that's out and available right now. Everybody's dying to get it. And then it doesn't show up on people's top 10 lists. Is that strange to you, or does that just seem like normal operating procedures?
I think it's an interesting thought in terms of it being strange. I can only speak for how I put together my list in doing this now for our, I believe, fourth year of this type of list. I've noticed that recency bias, games that I've played most recently, it is not as much of a factor in my top 10 as much as almost like a replay bias. I have a bias of the games. These are the games that I most want to replay again.
Sure.
I've played them. I've enjoyed them immensely. But to what your comment directly, I think there is a challenge that happens once you hit a certain number of games played with having games that stand out from the rest of the field. And so if, let's say, a game is hyped right now and you just get your hands on it in March. So you hear about it in January that this is coming out. It actually comes out in February, and to like the A-list reviewers, right? And they're playing that before the general public and truly falling in love with it. What's that?
We're G list.
Okay, yeah, we're guidance. We're good for the whole family. I agree with that. That's a great rating for the Game Schooler podcast. Rated G, guidance. Gamers. What I think, I just got to hop back on my train of thought here. Sorry. And then the general public gets to play it at Gen Con in August, right? And take it home, and that reviewer has already moved on and is 6 months down the stream. And they were hyping it up. So as other folks like you and me who are on the G list of reviewers, not on the A list or even the B tier, we're just really still diving into it. So I think that timing is out there. I'll give an example of a game where this happened to, but then it still won a whole bunch of awards. Is Earth. When Earth came out in, I believe, 2023, I'd have to fact check myself on this, but it was number one on the hotness all over BGG. And then the thing was quiet for about 9 months, and then it won a bunch of Dice Tower awards. And, and that's one example that I know in going through this list in the past.
I was surprised in making my list as a small spoiler, but every one of the games that's on my top 10 is either a game of the week or scheduled to be a game of the week at some point.
Yep.
Which means, and that doesn't mean that they're like in the last 2 weeks they were game of the week. It's like throughout the entire year, these have been the games that rose to the top. And maybe it's just a matter of the way that we have a game of the week and we're not reviewing 800 titles a year. So the ones that we're talking about are the ones that we really love. So,
but I think that's a big part of it, Doug. I really do. If each of us are playing between 200 and 230 different games in a year, and that's not just different games from 2024, that's total. And if each of us is getting 500-ish plays, just round numbers, but knowing how much we play games, and I keep track of those stats, I think we're probably playing, 30 to 50% from other folks who are on a review schedule. And especially if that's how you generate part of the income for your living, hey, you got to do it. That's part of your job. But in terms of just enjoying the hobby and learning new games and enjoying learning, that's interesting. You brought it up before. I think it's interesting. I just don't know what leads to it.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting when you have for a month out of the year, people talking about, it seems like every month there's a new, oh my gosh, you have to play this game. It's the newest thing. Everybody's talking about it. It's selling out. It's hard to get. And then when those games don't show up on the top 10 lists of people, it's very surprising to me because they're the ones that are getting it first. So it's like I get behind the idea of like, oh, there's a bunch of hype behind this, and then everybody plays it, and maybe the hype wasn't so big. That's certainly an issue that happens where it's like, okay, well, I'm not exactly sure why the reviewers thought this was the greatest game in the world when the general public seems to have dismissed it out of hand. But when there seems to be that general consensus for a full month or so out of the year of like, you got to play this, everybody, and what games were people are buzzing about at Gen Con of like, oh, I got to get this. These are the hot games at Gen Con. And there's like none of them show up on people's lists. It's bizarre to me.
Yeah, no, you're right. That is bizarre. But I think, so there's two things there. One, that actual sense of getting that game, that's part of the hobby.
Yeah.
That's its own thing, being able to get it. And two, there are enough good games being made that one human can't keep up in a year.
Yeah.
We have now, in my opinion, we have gotten to the point where there are potentially enough great games where a person is not able to get enough plays to really get into the strategy, really learn the procedures all the way through of the different phases of the game, especially at that midweight Euro and when you get into the heavier games, right? You might get 1 to 2 plays of it, and it's like, ooh, I got to move on. There's more stuff to play.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it too, that we're just at a point where there are so many titles, and the zeitgeist, what gets caught, that river is moving way too fast. And you can't swim in it in either direction,
Yeah. Yeah. The games pop up and then fall back down and rinse and repeat, basically.
Yeah.
So what's awesome in gaming, Michael?
Yeah, I just want to, on your thought though, and I guess I'll hold that till the high five. Apologies. What's awesome with gaming, I just have to give a brief shout out to folks from the Game Schooler podcast and also Board Game Arena. Being able to play games against others and playing games I love without having to pressure my play group. And I know I'm talking about you as if you're not here, Doug, but Christmas morning, I just fired up a game of Nidavellir and a game of Forest Shuffle, and I won both of them. I was like, whoa. And then I played a game of Harmonies, and I got my first win ever on Board Game Arena in Harmonies. I was like,
Christmas miracle.
That might be that's where I was leading to. That might be the greatest Christmas present I've ever gotten, and nobody knows about it until now when I share it with Doug and our friends who listen to the podcast. But it was one of those nice little joys. I love playing I love playing games in person, and that will always be my preferred format. But it's just not always practical.
Yeah.
I don't have 4 days in every week to drive someplace and to stay in a hotel and to play conventions with a couple of my buddies and meet a bunch of new people. That would be awesome. But being able to just open the laptop for an hour while everybody else is doing something and jump into Board Game Arena and play with people around the world, or even people that I feel like I'm starting to get to know just by their username in our Discord and on Board Game Arena, it's outstanding. And just one other little example of that, I've been playing the heck out of Darwin's Journey. This is a game that I will likely not play in person again, unless it's a very long time down the road.
My memory has failed of the experience of playing that the first time that I've forgotten.
Man. I'm barely good enough to be able to play it. And I'm not at a point where I feel like I could teach that to other humans. But just having an asynchronous 2-player, 3-player game back and forth of Darwin's Journey, or, hey, I want to stay fresh on the rules for Carnegie in case I do play it coming up in the next 6 months, so I'll get a game going of that. Boy, Board Game Arena, just from that sense of relearning and almost reviewing games, it might not be awesome to anyone else. It's been great for a lot of different factors, especially while we were on a break here for a few weeks.
Yeah. I wish I don't know why I don't gravitate towards it. I feel like maybe I should, but for whatever reason, it just, I don't know.
Different platforms for different people.
Yeah,
I can't do Facebook. I choose not to do Facebook. Boy, man, my wife, my mother, they could,
it's their life. It's my wife's life.
They're very good at it.
They're very
they enjoy
passionate.
it. And not making a judgment, I'm just saying, different platforms for different people.
Yeah. So the thing that was awesome for me is for our break, I got very little gaming in with different family events and getting ready for family events, traveling, and even stuff that I thought, it's like I went down to my in-laws, brought a bag of games, was there for 2 days, and didn't crack a single one open.
And why is that awesome? Tell us.
What is awesome is that I did get to play games over the break. We had an awesome game day that we got to play stuff, and it was nice because it was some new stuff, some old stuff, repeated plays, and it was stuff that we really wanted to play.
Yeah.
And we're excited about playing, and there's a difference between that and I'm not going to – I don't want to get into the thing of like, oh, we got to play stuff for the podcast, that type of thing. But there are times where you're playing games that sometimes like, I'd rather be playing this other one that I just bought than maybe this one that I feel like I have to review. And that was a full day of games that were just for pleasure that was really fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, and we're about 10 days out from that, and I missed that experience already. I sent a message in the group chat to our game group today and just said, hey, what do you have for Saturdays in February? What do you have for this? What do you have for that? And lives are busy, so I don't take those days for granted. I mean, when you open up your house, you plan a meal around it, you learn a half dozen games, you learn another 2 games because you know I'll be teaching them, and it's just fun.
Yeah.
It's the joy. We're in that magic circle together, learning, trying to destroy each other, and at the same time giving each other grace and helping each other out. That was a great day. That was a great day with very few new games being played. A game might have been new for one of us, but I think we only had one very fresh game in that entire day. The rest had all been played by one of us at the table. And to just one thing to add into what you said, it's because we love to play games. And getting review copies of games and getting to review games, even when we buy them back, crowd from because we think it's going to be perfect to talk to folks about. When there's a miss, you guys, I'm talking to our listeners, it hurts. When we get a game, especially if we've reached out. If I've reached out to a publisher, say, hey, I'd really like to take a look at this game, the title, the theme, possible skills. I've read an overview. I've looked at the rules. I think this is something we can talk about. And once it gets to the table and it doesn't quite work, I don't want to say it hurts our feelings, but it does really feel like a miss. If you've ever done any athletic contest and you have a miss, or if something just, oh man, I thought that was going to work better, and over time that has now compiled to 100+ misses. Games that we've played sometimes more than once and not talked about. So that's just where we're at.
It's like having a favorite actor and then going to see a movie that they're in, and maybe you can only go to one movie a month. It's like, this is your movie to see for the month, and then it's a dud, and you're like, oh, that was my one movie for the month. I'm not going to be able to get out again to see one, and I had high hopes for that one. And it's like, good. It seems like it's not necessarily. It's like we've talked about seasons in gaming before in the past, but it's like, as our kids are getting older, it's like those windows are getting smaller and smaller of when you can have the gaming. And when you're trying to fit stuff in there and then stuff doesn't work, it's almost like a compounded problem where it's like in the past, pre-podcast, to be like, oh, I bought this game and
moving on.
It didn't work. I'll sell it. Oh, well, type of thing. And now it's like that time is so precious. It's like gold.
Yeah. And that's the double-edged sword of the stringent criteria. I mean, when we talk about a game, we really we stand by it. There's no fake reel on the podcast when we're talking about our experiences with the game. The flip side of that, there's a lot of games we haven't talked about that we played, and sometimes more than once, because one of us will play the game together for the first time. Like, we must have done a rule wrong. Somebody's got to go back and check that. Who's going to take it home? I'll take it.
Yep. Yeah, there's more of those than we've talked about. So, dear listener, appreciate that we're not subjecting you to that. But speaking of games we want to put a small spotlight on. Michael wants to talk about Zoo Vadis. I have some of the stats, but I don't have the description of the game. This came out in 2023 from Bitewing Games. It re-implements an older design called Quo Vadis from Dr. Reiner Knizia with the art by Kwanchai Moria. 3 to 7 players and about, that's not 20 to 40 minutes, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's exactly what it is.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and so this is a reimagining, a re-implementation. Doug, I would not call this a reskin of a game from 1992 called Quo Vadis, which Knizia Files have long been asking for a reprint, as that game has been quite expensive. And in Quo Vadis, that was set in the Roman Senate, and the goal of that game was to make deals and win elections to become the most popular person in the Senate. Well, in Zoo Vadis, you're an animal attempting to make your way into the star exhibit. And on your turn, you're going to have 4 different actions that you can take. You can add an animal into the zoo, or you can advance one of your animals if you have the majority support of all the animals in that space. So if there's 5 total spaces and you have 3 animals, we'll need to give support. So let's pretend I'm the rhino and I have 2 in that zoo exhibit, and there's those 5 total spaces. Some other animal is going to need to lend me their support so I can leave. And guess what? That might cost you. Because one really, I think, cool design choice that Dr. Knizia made is if your vote allowed an animal to leave, you get a laurel. And laurels are points. So at the end of the game, the animal that has collected the most laurels or points wins. I just want to go on a quick sidebar here. Bitewing Games does a fantastic job with production, and I'll ruin the spoiler. This game really pulled me into them as a company. Their deluxe stuff is wonderful. So you have add an animal, advance an animal, and then just the 2 other quick things. You have these peacocks that are in the zoo, and they add so much to the game because in order to move a peacock, they can only move towards the star exhibit, and they have to be bribed. But you have to have a 2 laurel, and you can't make change. So you may want to move a peacock closer to the star exhibit, or you may need to bribe them. But I'm sitting on a 4-point laurel, and I don't want to give that. So you get all those little choices, and it's so simple. My 9-year-old picked up on all that stuff really quick. So in that example of the rhino in a space, from 5 with before, if Doug had a tiger and there was a peacock, I could bribe that peacock to advance. However, peacocks were, they do require those 2 laurels. And then finally, there's a zookeeper. And what the zookeeper does, when he's placed on a path, because there's this little pathway between exhibits, people can move forward without consensus. So in a 3, and a 5, and a 7 player game, you can move that zookeeper around to help others or to prevent others from moving without needing that consensus. And then each time you move from exhibit to exhibit, you're going to collect a laurel. And they have different points, anywhere from 2, 3, 4, and some of them give some ability bonuses as well. Here's the thing that is just awesome. That right there, everything that I just said, that is the classic, the beginner variant. So that's Quo Vadis. And my entire family played that over the holidays. Some of us at the table had a blast. And I believe this is why this is a spotlight game and not a game of the week, because this game will not work for every audience. This is a bickering, negotiating. There's going to be some hard feelings. 3 people at the table loved it. 2 were like, I don't need to play that again. And what Zoo Vadis adds, so everything I just said, that's how we played with my family. But at a convention, if you're playing with your game group, there's these asymmetrical powers to each animal, but in classic Dr. Knizia fashion, these powers can only be played on other people's turns. So you're negotiating your power, your ability, right, throughout the game, which is just awesome. And then there's this Reiner mechanism. If you don't make it into the star exhibit, you're not eligible to win. So you could be sitting there with stacks of laurels, and everyone knows, like, yeah, you're over there with 17 to 21. we got to keep you out of the star exhibit. And so people will try to move those peacocks forward at the end to get more peacocks in the star exhibit, or allow somebody to get a second animal in the star exhibit so that I can't get in there, which the tension is wonderful. And it happened when I was playing with my family. I might have allowed it to happen on purpose just so my 9 and 15-year-old could have more fun beating up on dad. But also playing that at a convention with a bunch of strangers and one of our friends from our game group, and interviewee of the podcast, Dan Cunningham, world-renowned insert designer. People get into character, man. Like the tiger was the tiger. The rhino was the rhino. And it's just a beautiful game that Bitewing has made, and I'm really grateful that they're bringing back some of these classics.
Yeah, well, it's a game that's not in my wheelhouse. I'm impressed that you got this to the table with your family. I mean, I think that is a small victory within itself, just because of I can see where the meanness. Now, I know you've got some gamers over there that don't mind being cutthroat, and probably the ones that don't like being cutthroat are probably the two that didn't enjoy it as much as the others.
Yeah, my wife likes push your luck, and my middle child does not like meanness in board games.
Yeah.
And so the fact that there's not that push your luck element, she's like, I don't want to have to negotiate. I don't know if you can go.
I could have predicted which ones didn't enjoy it. The production looks awesome, but I think it, like you said, it's a very specific type of game.
Yep.
And for me, it's like one of those where it's like, I don't necessarily like negotiating, and I know that my feelings would get hurt.
Yeah, and there's not that efficiency puzzle.
I would get too into it.
Yeah,
and it's like once I make that pivot, it's like I don't need to put myself into that.
Well, and your deals are only binding for that current deal, so you can make an agreement on futures and then absolutely break that agreement, which happened with my 9 and 15-year-old and happened at the convention where I was GMing the game. Okay. Yeah. I played this at Game Holcon with 6 players, and people were breaking deals all over the place.
Circumstances change, Michael.
But the one thing, and then we can move on, why I was able to get to the table, Bitewing's rulebook and just how they present information, it is so good. So the full overview is 3 sentences, and I feel like reading that full overview, it's like, yeah, that's better than most of the things we ever see on Board Game Geek. Bitewing Games is 2 dentists who've started this company and are bringing back a lot of Dr. Rainer Knizia's designs, and their full overview. Earn laurels as you navigate and negotiate your animals into the star exhibit. The game ends immediately once all the spaces in the star exhibit are filled. Whoever has the most laurels at the end of the game wins and is declared the zoo mascot. But your laurels are worth nothing unless at least one of your animals reaches the star exhibit. You could just hear Dr. Knizia's cadence and voice. Yeah. But there's something else that's just streamlined and edited in that I think is coming through in a lot of the games that they're putting out. So
and the production looks awesome. So if that's if you like negotiating games and some of that back and forth, it's probably one for you to check out.
And if you like chunky acrylic tiles and poker chips that stack, I left those out for this one because I some bad things with previous episodes, but they're in there too, Doug.
Awesome. All right, before we move on to the game of the week, just remind everybody to sign up for the Game Schooler Discord, gameschooler.com/Discord. Great, awesome community there. Spread the word about the podcast. If you're a new listener, welcome. And contact us with questions or comments, email at gameschooler.com. Again, email at gameschooler.com. We'd love to hear from you. Now, let's move on to the game of the week.
The game of the week. The game of the week is an in-depth look at a family-friendly game rated G we think you should try if you get the chance. This week's game is Knarr, Knarr. Doug, give us the stats.
All right, published in 2023 by Bombix and Pandasaurus. The designer is Thomas DuPont, and the art is by Carrie and Antoine. 2 to 4 players, about 30 minutes. Side of the box says 8 plus. Board Game Geek says 10 plus, which I tend to agree with Board Game Geek on this one. And this is going to fall into a family game weight of complexity. So what is Knarr? Knarr is a game in which you are leading a band of Vikings and exploring and trying to be the first one, depending on player count, I believe, to get to a set number of points. On your turn, you're going to do one of two simple actions. You are either going to recruit or explore. And when you recruit, you are going to play a Viking from your hand down in front of you, and then activate all of the other Vikings that share the same color. So if I play a yellow Viking down, I will then activate all of the other yellow Vikings that I have played beforehand, which are giving me resources, moving it up. There's a reputation track, which can give you some recurring income from round to round, victory points. There's other helmets and horns and things like that you can collect. Then you are going to take the card on the main player board that is under the yellow space. Which may not be a yellow card. It may be a red card. It may be a green card. So that's what happens when you recruit. If you explore, you're going to discover a new land. You're going to pay for that land by using the Vikings that you have previously recruited. So that big, long engine that was awesomely getting bigger and bigger and more powerful, the more yellow cards that you added, you may spend some of those in order to explore a new land. Those lands go above your shipboard. You can use, what do they call them? Let's see. Recruit tokens. You can use recruit tokens that you may have acquired throughout the game to basically use as a wild when collecting a land. So you might be able to spend some of those recruit tokens instead of getting rid of some of your Vikings. And then as you start developing or exploring new lands, they're, again, piling up on top of your ship the same way that your recruited Vikings are. You can then, at any time before or after your turn, spend any silver bracelets you have. You can have up to 3 of them to activate a single, for each silver bracelet you spend, up to 3, you can activate the rows in the explored lands. So another way to kind of activate all of the lands that you've acquired as you work your way up to get points. And whoever reaches 40 victory points triggers the end game.
And everybody else gets one more turn.
So that is how you play Knarr. It is a great... Well, I put this, if you like Century Spice Road, there's a very good chance that you will like Knarr. This game reminds me a lot of what I like about Century Spice Road, which is kind of building that efficiency engine and then deciding when to reset that engine.
Yeah. And I have this game sitting right next to Splendor Duo on my desk, because I would also say, like, if you like Splendor Duo, but you have more than 2 people, if you want to play a game with 3 or 4, you're going to get a lot of that same type of combo, payoff, reward, a lot of game in a little box.
Yep.
That Century's a good comparison. I didn't think of that. I was thinking more small box to small box comparisons instead of just gameplay, but it's very similar where, you're trading in the gems to get the card that you want. This one, you're trading in your cards to get the ship that you want.
Yeah, it's got... because they have simple turns, it moves fast, right? There's not a lot of downtime between turns. And it has what I would kind of describe as like a contained sandbox that allows you to pull various levers and advance tracks. So you have a whole bunch of options on how you want to play. Do you want to move up that reputation track and get a passive income going? Do you want to have a really big stack of
Which you do.
If you want a really big stack of red Vikings that then...
Hold on. We're not moving on that fast. Dear listeners, if you didn't hear it, when Doug says passive income, he's making a direct insult at me. Because if the game has passive income, Doug has already figured out how to fly up that track before anyone else at the table can, and I'm playing for second. So we magically had a lot of games with passive income at a recent game day.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get a little bit of inside baseball there. Back to you, Doug.
At the same time, there are points when I'm playing that game and somebody else has a huge stack of red Vikings and then keeps playing more red Vikings down, and it's like, wait, you're doing what? You're activating 5-10 cards?
Yeah.
That type of thing. Or some people are really racing out to get the lands and explore those and then activating those. And so those 3 little tracks of whether you're doing reputation, your engine building is with your Vikings or your lands, and manipulating those.
They all pay off.
Enough variety to kind of go in different directions and make every game feel different without slowing down the game because there are too many options.
Yeah,
which I think that's what I like about it, that it's like there are a lot of options, but they're contained and there's side rails on them, so you're not getting distracted, which is really cool.
Yeah, and even in a 4-player game, once I see that you are developing that passive income track through absolutely dominating prestige, am I using the reputation? Reputation. Then I know, like, well, I better build up a different way. So I'm going to go out here and get some of those red Vikings. And then the other person at the table realizes, okay, that's where they're going. You still have 3 options to run towards that win condition. How do you like the end game? And the first one to 40, but everybody gets another turn. Because I really enjoy that part of the game. To me, there's a lot of interesting decisions that get made as the person that's triggering that end game, especially through repeated plays.
I like it. I think there's I think it's what brings in the competition in this game, that there is that head-to-head of you're seeing people move up on the victory track, and it puts the pressure and the importance of the decisions you're making. It makes them feel more important. And there is a little bit of a battle of, I see he's got those colors down. He might be able to claim that land, but that's the land I was going to go after. And so there is that watching what other people are doing, the same way that you mentioned, he's going on the reputation track. Maybe I should pivot and try something else, or maybe I can try and catch up quick. And so that, to me, that race is what adds the tension and the competition to the game and that interaction. And normally I'm not a huge fan of race games in general, but this one really works because I love race games that are that provide attention, that are not necessarily just rewarding the person that's racing through the game, because that's not what this game is about. You may be ahead of me by 5 victory points, but I may play my 3 silver bracelets, and all of a sudden I'm cashing out 10 victory points. So you can catch up in a hurry. It's not just about, I'm just going to, a lot of race games, like, I can just blow by this stuff and I'm not going to waste my time playing the actual game. I'm just going to get to the end first. This one, you have to play the game. You have to build different engines and tear them down and build them up again. And the second that you pay out your lands by spending those silver bracelets, you have to try and get more silver bracelets again in order to do that again. So I like that kind of constant recycling.
Yeah, I've had really good games, and I've had games that were awful because of decisions I made, and I like that in a game. And what I mean, in a game where the win condition is first one past 40 triggers the end, I've had scores ranging from 26 to 48. So you're talking about a range of 22 in a game like this.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that variability. It's not, Doug got to 43, I'm at 39, and somebody else is at 41. And then the next time we play, they got to 43, 39, 41. No, there could be a spread on how a game goes from game to game.
Yeah. One thing I do want to highlight is that the artwork and the iconography is extremely intuitive and easy to read, and they have the color ADD compliance. So all of the colors, Michael, if you're a longtime listener, Michael has trouble with some colors.
I'm colorblind.
That would be what trouble with colors is. I'm just trying to say it nicer.
The game uses the color alphabet.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So it's just it was never an issue, and there was no processing time in between. Sometimes it's like, all right, we gotta wait a little bit, and not saying like as a jerk of like, oh, we gotta wait.
Oh, no, there's an extra second and a half all the time for me for a lot of games, and
yeah.
I'll just jump in and say this game did a lot to other games in my collection. The first time that I played this game, almost immediately I took 40 other games into Noble Knight, folks. Trimmed down my collection by 10%. And it's not just the colorblind, it was also where things were laid out.
Yeah.
There was a flow to it that made sense to my brain, and I thought that I was able to play it just like everybody else at the table.
Yeah.
And to have that feeling where I don't, brown, right? Green, right? Which one's, that one's purple? Here,
Yeah.
there. And so, there's a lot of games. If I play them, it's on BGA where I'm able to hover. I'm not going to play them at the table with my game group.
Yeah.
I'm not going to play them at the table with strangers. And that's not other people being discourteous. That's me recognizing that I don't know what things mean, and I'm going to break everyone else's train of thought 40 to 50 times in the next hour. And this game was a revelation with the color ADD. So,
yeah, no, they
might be pouring on too thick there, but that's been my experience, and I love it. I mean,
it's in a class of game that normally it would be an issue. Like this had stuff that if that was not in the game would be unplayable for you. And it's a game that you really like and enjoy, and it would be one that I would play and be like, oh, Michael, you would love this game.
Yeah.
And then we would try it, and it's like, it just doesn't work, And so the fact that they nailed it is, kudos to them.
And I exaggerated. I exaggerated by one. I took 39 games into Noble Knight, and I walked out with Knarr and Kutna Hora. And I can remember the day. I got the 2 games that I wanted. Yes, I did pay full price. So my friend Doug was shaking his hand and saying, oh, Michael, why'd you do that? But I got the 2 that I wanted, the 39 that didn't work for me, and most of them were because the colors. And I had this whole shelf on my Calyx, like a someday maybe. Well, if I use a Sharpie or if I put a sticker on, I was like, nope,
I don't got time for
not
that.
After playing Knarr. I can play this game. And still play it poorly. Still make some bad decisions along the way, gamble where I shouldn't, and have a good time. Nobody to blame but me.
Yeah, the good thing is that we don't have to hear about that excuse. So he can play terribly, and we know it's all on him this time.
Hey, those Garfield games, it's not an excuse. I didn't know that was a raider. I thought I could take that person to the marketplace.
The only thing to be aware of on this one that I have is I feel like the price is a little higher than you would expect for the size of the box.
$24.99.
Yeah, and so usually you would see a box like that on the shelf, and it would be $14 to $20. And
but would you pay $24.99 for Century Spice Road, the game that you compared it to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think it is. It's one. I'm not saying it's not worth it.
It's worth pointing out.
It's one of those things that you're going to pick. If you're at your local game store and you pick it up on the shelf and you say, "Why is this $25?" And like you said, if they put it in a box that was twice the size, you wouldn't bat an eye, and you'd be like, "Great." So it's more of just
and then we'd be slamming it for the box size.
Why is there so much space in here?
If they would have used tarot cards and had this thing in the middle, they could have fit it in the smaller box.
Yeah. As far as the best fit, I think this one's kind of unique because it's a short, chunky game that I think can work with hobbyists, but is simple enough that I think it can also work as a family game. And so being able to to branch out to those different groups is really hard to do. I have a lot of games in my collections that will work really well for my family that a hobby game group would eat up and destroy and say this is hot garbage. And I have a lot of games that my hobby game group would say, oh, sure, you could play this with a family, that I would get glazed over looks and what do I do with my hands type of situation, So this one does both of those really well.
Yeah, and it does it in 25 minutes from startup to repackaging. It's a 25-minute experience, and if you are that person in your life and you're listening to the Game Schooler podcast, so I think we know who we're talking to here, but you're the person who takes the game to the holidays, or you have that brother-in-law and nephew that they expect you to bring a game to. If you've played Space Base with them, if you've played Century Spice with them, this is a game that people, when they get done with it, are like, that was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
I didn't know games could do that. It's like one of those type of things.
Yeah, and one that I'm glad that I have in my collection, one that I really look forward to playing more over the next few years, and frankly, one that's going to get thrown in a backpack when going to conventions or other game days, because I think there is enough familiarity among those hobbyists that Doug talked about, where you can just grab Knarr and say, hey, we got an hour. We want to just sit and play Knarr. Oh, yeah, I've been wanting to play that one. Or, yeah, let's get it played. The rules are just so straightforward that I think if it weren't for the art and the theme, it would fit in a lot more settings, like schools and things like that. And I don't want that to come off cynical or snarky, but I don't. The theme just doesn't pop into a lot of middle school or even high school classrooms. And
not because it's violent, gory, or graphic in any way. Just because it's boring looking to a middle schooler, right? Is that
probably
that's what
because
you're trying?
It's tame?
Yeah,
it's tame enough where it might just not pop. But I'll tell you what, the game is fantastic, and really is one that has been on a lot of high five lists. One that I'm thankful that our Discord talked about it. I think certainly before I played it. Yeah, and there's a fun game in that box.
Yeah, as far as skills are concerned, we talked about competition. I think it's a great one because there's that subtle underneath. You can kind of compete and have your own game without messing up everybody else, which is I really think is a great skill for younger players to have that type of competition. There's that tactical thinking when those cards get taken out from under you. When do you want to? You have a hand of cards of 3 cards at a time, 2 or 3 cards. So, maybe you thought you were going to play this card, but you might pivot and say, "Oh, I'm going to do this." So you can kind of have a 1 to 3 turn little mini strategy going, but every once in a while you're like, ooh, that card that came out, I want that card and I want to play it next. And then you kind of shuffle it in there.
And that's also where I have resilience. There's some resilience, and not just with younger gamers, also with grown gamers who do get log 500 plus plays. You can get tied on a strategy and the perfect card is out, and it just happened to work for somebody else, and they didn't hate draft it from you. It just happened to work for what they needed, and you got to be able to bounce back. So where do I go from here? And those aw shucks moments that happen at the table too, I think lead to the fun, because in a 30-minute game, you have to be able to change your strategy and adjust and have some of that resilience.
Yeah, and then I love the resource management, and this is the best skill I could think about is you are managing your different engines, whether that's a single color of recruits and how much you can push out of that little engine, or how fast I can cycle through some of those silver bracelets to activate the lands that I've explored, or do I want to spread out my Vikings so I can explore more lands and things like that. So managing how all that flow of production and the logistics of that is really the crux of the game, and does a really good job of that.
I thought you might beat me to that skill before I could say it, especially since you mentioned passive income so early in the segment. The resource management is the game from start to finish, because on your very first turn, you have to decide which Viking you're going to put out. So immediately you're somewhat declaring, I'm going after this resource, because at the top of the card, that's where, is it the top or the bottom? I should know, but they're not in front of me. At the top of the card, It's going to say, the resource, and then the type is there clear as day, and the whole table can see it. So part of the resource management isn't just when am I going to take this action to kick off these huge combos. It's really being able to signal to the table what your next turn could possibly be, or what you're setting up. That happens on the very first turn of the game. And so that resource management with decision making, it's not how we've often approached or viewed resource management and decision making. So those are my skills.
All right, sweet. So that is our game of the week. Check it out, especially if you like some of those other games like Century Spice Road, or Michael mentioned Splendor Duel. That's another one there. So that's our game of the week, Knarr from Pandasaurus Games.
The School of Gaming. In the School of Gaming, we discuss concepts, keywords, etiquette, and helpful ideas in the world of gaming. This week, we discuss 2025 New Year's resolutions. All right, Doug, who's going to lead us into this one?
You.
Okay, so I'm bringing 3 to the table, and one I foreshadowed at the very front end of the table, but I want to enjoy learning new games. At some point in 2024, and even in parts of 2023, learning new games became a challenge or became tedious, and it started to lead to that W word that Doug used, work. If it's a sense of, well, I've got to learn these 5 games so that we can do this one that week and do this one the week after and be prepared to talk about it and filter that out. That one of my New Year's resolutions is to enjoy learning new games. So that's the first one for me. And I have 2 others, but I don't want to just dominate this segment.
I've got kind of, I'll play around and jump off of what you say, because we probably have a little bit of similar stuff. And that I have under the idea of balancing playing games for the podcast and for myself, which I think fits in kind of somewhat what you're talking about, which is trying to find that right balance of, okay, this is ideally, the games that I'm playing for myself and the ones I'm really excited about to get off the shelf are also ones that we're going to be talking about on the podcast. And certainly there are some times where you play a game that you think you're going to love that then you don't love, and you're going to be not talking about it on the podcast. And then there are other games where you're not really interested in it, but then you play it and you're like, that's really good. We are going to talk about that on the podcast. Yeah. So it works in both directions, but just trying to be a little bit more aware of, and maybe it goes into the idea of another thing that I have on my list, which is playing more games that I already know I love, and stop trying to search for the next great game and enjoy the games that are already great. And I go ahead.
No, I want to go there, but I just want to wrap up where I'm approaching the enjoying new games. I have a terminal degree. I love learning. If I'm not learning at my job, if I'm not learning at what I'm doing, I really do become a less happy human, just simply put. And I've had jobs in the past, even as a teenager, young 20s, like retail and restaurant, but part of what I liked learning. I liked learning about those industries and seeing what's going on, how do things work. And then when it hit the ceiling and wasn't learning anymore, or move on. And within the hobby, my New Year's resolution is to enjoy learning new games, and not have. But
what if you don't? If you're not interested in the game,
then I'm not.
Because that's part of that. That's where mine swings in, where it's like, if you're not interested in the game, are you going to try and make that fun to learn it?
No.
Or okay.
No, there's too many other games to explore and to play and to wonder if it's going to work, not just for the podcast, but for other people in my life that I play games with.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to, that's a resolution that I'd like to commit to from that. Yep.
Yeah. All right. What else you got?
Number 2, you just talked about it, and that's enjoy replaying games.
Yeah.
And anyone with 5+ years, quote unquote, in the hobby has just a bevy of games to play again and again. And I want to have that joy of playing games for a 5th, 6th, 7th time. Some of them even a 2nd, 3rd time, so.
Yeah. I think that's I love spotlighting games that have fallen through the cracks. But at the same time, a lot of those that I find are ones that I am interested for other reasons, for my own personal reasons. It's like I pick out a game and it's like, oh, I really want to play that because I really want to play that, not through the lens of, oh, I think this will be good for the podcast, or I think Michael might like it, or whatever. There are still opportunities to try those games out because I'm already interested in them already, and then champion them if I like them, rather than wading through a whole bunch of stuff that may or may not work out.
Yeah.
Hoping to find something that will work out. Some of the folks that are just reviewing gobs and gobs of games that just have to play so much garbage just to try and find gems. I don't want to do that.
So what's your resolution there?
Play more games that I already know I like.
Great.
And stop.
And that you already know.
And
right?
stop trying to search for another great game when I already have great games.
Yeah.
That constant need to feed, which leads into the other part, which is something that I started last year and I want to continue doing, is to continue to reduce my collection of games to games that I'm actively excited to share with other people.
That is one of your favorite parts of the hobby, right? You love showing a game to people and knowing that they're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, well, and if it's sitting on my shelf and I can't look at it and be like, I'm excited to share that or play it again or show it to somebody, then it doesn't need to be there. Because if I don't have that excitement to do that, when am I going to play it again? And part of that is, as kind of like my next filter, is I want to do my best to avoid adding what I would call one-trick ponies to my collection, or removing them, which is games that I think that are a fun experience, but I don't need to own them. Where it's like, that was fun to play, and I enjoyed my experience of it, but I'm probably not going to play it again. Or I don't feel like there's enough to bring me back, even though I really enjoyed the experience that I had. Trying to limit those as well.
That's awesome. My third and final resolution for 2025 as a board gamer, I want to continue to seek new people and opportunities to play games with new people. I am at a place in the hobby where I am very comfortable. I have a game group that I enjoy playing games with. I love playing games with. We have a handful of other friends that we get together every so often and play. We play games with our wives. I play games with my family. We have our 2 to 3 cons that we go to, just a plethora of gaming opportunities. And yet some of my just incredible memories and I'm almost shocked when it happens is if I'm traveling for work and I go to a board game meetup and there's other awesome people that are playing, and I'll likely never see them at the table again.
Yeah.
But for that 3 hours on a Wednesday night or that 2 hours on a Tuesday night, I played some board games with some people and had a good time. I don't have that experience anywhere else in my life. I think people in different eras would get that with going to a ball game. You go to a ball game, you sit next to cool people, you chat it up, you root for the same team, and then you go home. And now you just turn on the nice, 4K and watch it in your own house. But that sense of going out, it always feels like I'm taking a risk. Like, what if there's some rando really weirdos there? What if it smells like a middle school locker room in April or a wrestling locker room in February? But I want to continue to seek new people and opportunities to play, because right now I'm really comfortable, and I want to continue to just grow and get stretched.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I share that sentiment. Unfortunately, I feel like I never have the time to do that. It's more of the time constraint as opposed to the want constraint. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
and we're just different places that way. We're different routines, and I also have a hard time staying still when I'm away from my family. I don't mind the travel, but I also, start to really miss my family, and that it does provide a little bit of an escape. I know on that, if I'm gone for 3 nights in a row, one of those nights I'm going to go play board games.
Yeah. All right. So you're done with your list?
I brought in 3. Do you have other resolutions?
The only one, I've got 2 more. One of them is to continue to evaluate and understand what games I love and why I love them, and figuring out how those change and continue to change, how and why they change.
Do they change for you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you have a certain level of the season that you're in when you first played a game. If you're a new gamer enthusiasm, stuff that sticks around and lingers, mechanisms that maybe wear out for you.
Yeah.
It's like I've played enough of I'm not saying this is the case, but it's like at a certain point, it's like I have enough worker placement games. Which ones are the best?
Yes.
And which ones?
My scythe is still in shrink over on my shelf as I discover, like, what? This is a problem. Sorry to get in just my personal things, but you're talking about reducing collection, which one's this, which one's that. And it's like, if Doug has this game, why do I need this game?
Yeah. And if it's not jumping off my shelf, why do I have it?
Yeah.
So that type of thing. And then the last one is trying to play more games with my family and creating more of an effort to set aside time, which just seems like it keeps getting harder and harder. And every time it's like, oh, we'll do this, and one kid's got a sleepover, and one kid's doing this, and the other kid's sick. It's like, it's just so hard to get everybody on the same page, and even if it's one-on-one time to try and make more of an effort to do that, just seems like, which I'm sure our listeners deal with, but just as much as you want it to happen, sometimes it just doesn't, and then you make more of an effort and try harder.
That is a future School of Gaming topic. I would guess around 207 or 208. We're going to have to slot that in.
That's
a whole conversation in itself.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let us know in the Discord what you're looking forward to in the new year, or things that you're trying to change or make better in the way that you game or acquire, and all the stuff that we talk about on the show. We'd love to hear it. So with that out of the way, let's move into the top 10. If you're anything like us, you're constantly on the hunt for new games to try out. This week, Michael and I are going to be sharing our top 10 games from 2024. Normally, we do 2024.
2024. We might have to modify that intro a little bit. Because I don't know if we are always on the hunt for new games to try out.
No, probably not.
I think we're starting to shift as we get into episode 200. We might have to modify that intro, but
awesome games we want to share with other people is more.
Look at
more
that.
like
That's why you're the entrepreneur right there, Doug. Good
copywriter
work
extraordinaire. And as I divert from my Bob Dylan intro, the games of 2024. Normally we do this at the end of every year. I think I probably played in the 30, 35 range of games from 2024. Does that sound about right to you?
Could be.
You played more probably than I did, with some of your excursions and conventions and things like that. I'd have to look at some, in a couple episodes, we'll be reviewing our 2023 list, which I think is always like a better list than the year right after the year ends, when we kind of go back and we do our revisit of 2023. Now that we've got another year of playing the games that we may have missed and things like that. But I don't know that if I've ever had a year where there have been this many games of the week on my list. I don't know how many you have, but like I said, every one of the games on my list is either going to be or has been a game of the week, which is strange.
Yeah, I think we have two very different lists that way. My top 10 are typically 6 or 7 of them are games of the week, typically. Yeah. And this year it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's a potential 7th or 8th down the road. You know what I mean? So again, 6 out of the 10 are games of the week. And man, I have 23 games on my list. Just total, not total played, but ones that I was like, in making a list, oftentimes, you know, especially in our high five, I'll have 8 and have to whittle and shuffle. Yeah, this was 23. I was like, these are games that I really enjoyed. Yeah, like I almost had like a college football top 25 type list. And not every year is that way, but for me, 2024 was kind of an excellent year for games that really appealed to me. That I know didn't hit for either you or for others, but for me, it was just.
For me, I had a 14 or so, and then after that, it was a sea of good, but nothing that I was like, that's not. It was where I was like, I like that game and I enjoyed it, but it's not making my top 10. So there was a lot of games that were like good, but not ones that I need to continue to own or things like that. So it seemed like a bigger drop off because I went like from yes. These are all good. So my ones that made the list were really were really strong, and then afterwards it was like good, but not going to make my list.
Yeah, so. I didn't get the designer down on all these, so some of that I'll have to catch because, like I said, I did have 23 on the list, but I will catch that as we go. If you could help me out with the designer on the first one, just through the magic of Google, and then I'll get caught up. Are we jumping in? Is that okay?
Yeah. Number 24, though.
It was the spotlight of episode 188, Doug, if you need a little head start. Number 10 for me is Flip 7. And it was a spotlight for us, which we started doing about 15-ish episodes ago where we just shine a light on one game. So we're not talking about 5 different random games. And Flip 7 is a perfect spotlight game because there might not be all the skills in that card game that there are in other games. But if you just listen to our enthusiasm with this casino-ish type game, in which you are flipping up cards, and if the same number card comes up again, you bust. It is the purest push your luck game with just a few little ability cards, modifier cards thrown in. Not only is it a blast, but it's one that I played at a work event that people absolutely loved and wouldn't stop playing. It's one that I've played in other settings where people who don't play a ton of games but will still play cards have played, and we have the promo edition, so it's just a little tuck box. That was absolutely been a fantastic game for me. Hasn't hit for everybody, but has hit for a lot of people. It's marketed as the greatest card game of all time by
Eric Olson,
and published from the Op. Flip 7, number 10 for me. And I think if I were to repeat this list in 2 years from now or a year from now, I'm fairly certain it will still be right around that 10, if not higher mark. So that's my number 10.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a good game. I enjoyed it. I feel like that's one that I don't want to say I dismissed, but one that I feel like I have good push your luck games already. Yeah. That I didn't feel like it necessarily knocked anything out for me. But I know people have loved it and people are talking about it on the Discord. So great choice. My number 10 is at number 10, but I think it has a potential, like when we revisit this list, it may be higher and that's just based on not having played it as many times as I would have liked. And that is Nanotech, from Cosmos Games and designer Kane Klenko. I believe this comes up as a 2023 game on Board Game Geek, but it did not have an English release until
Gen Con,
so,
which was 2024.
Yeah. And in this game, you're
for us, for the G list. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're doing a set collection. Meanwhile, building this giant pyramid on the board and scoring points as you go for completing different sections on the table. It's beautiful, but also I thought it was going to be like, when I first got the demo of it, I'm like, oh, this is going to be maybe kind of clunky scoring each time that you have to score it as you're building this up. But it went really smoothly, and I really enjoyed that. Do I want to take that card for my set, or do I want to take this card because it's optimally placed for the building of the pyramid and getting points that way, and kind of that struggle back and forth of where do I want my points to come from and balancing that. So I think it will go higher just because it seems to fit in that wheelhouse of games that I like, but because I haven't played it enough, I didn't feel comfortable putting it any higher. So that is my number 10, Nanotech.
Awesome. Yeah, great choice there. Phenomenal game. Designed by local designer Kane Klenko and published by
Nunatech, it's called.
By Cosmos Games.
Got a spell check on there.
That's okay, Douglas. Number 9 was Game of the Week in episode 188. Let's Go to Japan, designed by Josh Wood and published by Alderock Games. And if you want to hear more about that or why I love it, we love it, you can go back and listen to episode 188. The Games of the Week, I'm not going to say a whole lot more than that, other than, this goes into the 2 parts of the School of Gaming segment that we just wrapped up. In terms of learning a new game, I loved learning this game. Doug's really good at teaching games, and there's times where we'll play a game and I'll drive home and it's like, man, that's one I need to see the rule book. I need to see how that works. Did I get this right? Did I get that right? And it really sat with me. Love the gameplay, love how it looks on the table, love the decisions that you get to make. Go back and listen to more of it in episode 188 if you want to. Otherwise, if I keep talking, this segment it will be 60 minutes long. Back to you, Doug.
All right. My number 9, we talked about in episode 173, and that is Dabawala from Queen Games, Felix Leader and Patricia Limburger. Just an awesome little game that divides out into 2 different halves. You're almost playing 2 different games. There's a little bit of a spatial component to it, and a little bit of you're selling your cards. Kind of reminds me of a full board game version of a game like For Sale, and just enjoyed it. And was something that I wasn't expecting to enjoy as much as I have. I'm disappointing because I feel like it's kind of just disappeared and gone, but I think they did some cool stuff there. So that's my number 9, Dabawala.
Yeah, that's great. What episode that was? One you said 173. Yeah,
yep.
Yeah, that was a fun one. Number 8 for me, there's a lot of buzz and a lot of hype about it right now, and I'm certainly on that train as well. And that's Harmonies, designed by Johan Benvenuto and published by Libellude. And I don't often like to use the term, oh, this game is that type of killer. But for me, when I played Harmonies, this is just for me speaking, it worked better than Cascadia. Just the combos and the stacking and trying to get the tiles placed just right and the bonuses and how the game moves. There is a lot of game in 20 to 30 minutes. Now, I will say candidly, I've only played this on Board Game Arena. This is not a game that I've played in person yet. I hope to pick it up in a trade in sometime in 2025 or 2026. I'm not in a hurry because I know I already enjoy it. I already know how to play it. But this is one that I look forward to showing other people. And so in the game, you've got 4 different little animals. And you're trying, or not animals, but you have 4 different cards in front of you, and you're trying to stack different tile types that you are drafting off of coasters. And yet your game space is fairly limited. I mean, you only have 12, 13-ish turns to try to get a lot done. And the first time you get the combination done, it might be worth 4 points. The second time, it could be worth 7 points. But if you could trigger that same combination for a third time, it's going to be worth 12 points. And each time you trigger a combination, you take a block off of the card. So if it already has a block stack there, you can't use that same combo again. So just the decisions, it's one that on the table, maybe there's a ton of AP. But playing it real time or even asynchronous on Board Game Arena, I have fallen for this one pretty hard. Number 8 is Harmonies.
Interesting. All right, my number 8, I think it'll probably be higher on Michael's list, but we shall see. We talked about in episode 168, and that is Skyrise, published in 2024 from Roxley Games, Gavin Brown, Sebastian Pochon, and Adam Wise. Usually not a huge fan of auction games, but this one works for me. I love the area control aspect of it, of building out, and similar to Nunatek with the that set collection combined with the physical board and putting and manipulating 3D pieces out there and figuring out how all that stuff works together, and obviously a beautiful production. So that is my number 8, Skyrise.
Yeah, it's number 4 for me. I'll just add in that the top 4 games on my list, these are games that I think will be in my collection a long time, and Skyrise is one of them. I love the auctioning in it and how if you auction at just the right time, you can automatically win future auctions. I love that part of it. I love what they did, and fun little game. One that, when you kind of hope for expansions, I hope they add a few more things down the line at an affordable rate, I might add. But I would love to have just a couple more characters or cards or different things thrown into that box.
I don't need it. Beautiful as it is.
Yeah, no, I know, but different people here. Up to 7, and this one could be higher on your list, but 7 for me is Captain Flip. Episode 181 is the game of the week. Captain Flip is just a fantastic game that I really dismissed, I think, because when I first saw it at a demo, maybe it was the art, but then when I saw, wait, this is coming from that Playpunk studio. That's that group with, Antoine Bauza is a part of it, and then the designer here is Remo Canzandori and Paolo Mori. It's like, what's going on in this little combo where I have a ship and I draft a tile and I'm trying to get other different abilities. Game I'm not very good at. Seem to get absolutely rolled by 12-year-olds and Doug and other random people that I've played it with. But boy, I just enjoy that game. There's a lot of fun, in that box for me. That's my number 7 is Captain Flip.
Honorable mention for me. Did not make the list, but my number.
It's a
7,
good one though, right? It was worthy of being game of the week. Yeah,
it's a great game.
Good.
Yeah, no, it was not one of those that was in the sea of good.
If you're ever getting rid of it, I know a home that will gladly partake. Right. Don't take that into Noble Night.
My number 7 is Adventure Party, the role-playing party game. We talked about this in episode 178 from Smirk and Dagger Games, designers David Smith and Travis Winstead. This is just a fun game and a different twist on a party game and something that I've been searching for a long time, which was a storytelling game that gave me enough structure that I didn't feel like people were left wondering how to fill in the gaps. And it's like, I don't have a theater degree, so how am I going to come up with something? There's enough framework for you to operate in that even the most... What are you laughing at over there? What?
Keep going, man. Don't let me get the chuckles and ruin this episode. Keep going.
No, so
I'm laughing at the last time you and I played this game with our family and our wives left the table, and you and me and my 15-year-old were just having a blast.
Yeah. It's one that I can take with people that you think are like, I'm not interested in this, and eventually they're having fun because there is enough for them to go out. Even if you have the most basic story of, I am this character, I'm using this weapon, and I am doing this, and then you roll and fail completely or succeed extraordinarily, it magically becomes fun as they begin to tell that story.
Well, and if you go back and listen to our episode, the way that you have to communicate your role, you know, a 20, you could tell them you did everything except kill it, right? But then when you get those 11s and 13s, yeah, but what's a 13 to Doug could be a 17 to somebody else at the table. And you very quickly get that economy down. And the other thing that has happened with me in this game, I had no idea that some people are as funny as they are. Adventure Party is a game that I've played. It's like, whoa, that's genuinely funny. Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
So that's what I was chuckling about. It's number 6 for me, so that's why I'm just continuing to go. Yeah, phenomenal game. We got to keep playing that.
All right. My number 6 we'll be talking about in episode 202, and that is Link City from Blue Orange Games and designer Emilian Alquire. And this is just a great party-style family game of building a city, and it is very low pressure and fun, and there's always laughter and storytelling. I don't want to spoil too much of it. We'll talk about it next week in greater detail, but that is my number 6, Link City.
Wonderful. Getting into the top 5. Number 5 for me is Wormspan, designed by Connie Vogelman and published by Stonemaier Games. It's marketed as Wingspan, but with dragons, except it plays slightly differently. And, I don't know if you saw the announcement today, but there's also now Wingspan with fish. I'm not saying that I have to run out and get that. I'll be honest, this was the biggest surprise for me probably in 2024. Offline, I made fun of this game to my friends. I wouldn't do that on the podcast. We keep it classy, but I was making fun of this one a lot. And then when I was traveling for work, went to one of those meetups, and the person's like, hey, let's play this. I've played this 8 times in the last month. I could teach this. And the other 3 people in the room were like, and myself included, were like, okay, let's play. And I just had one of those experiences with the game where it just, exceeded all my expectations. It's now in my collection, and it's one that I need to figure out where to get to the table and who to get to the table with, because I really do enjoy what's happening in there.
Yep, I thought this one might be on your list.
Mm-hmm.
That's such an interesting game for me, because which is a whole school of gaming segment, right? Where it's like, what do you do with a game that somebody that you like, really enjoys, and you look at it and you're like, I just not interested.
Then you just let them enjoy it and you don't put time into it.
Yeah, but it's something I think a lot of people struggle with. But and even me, because there is part of the thing where it's like, am I missing something? Should I want to play it? So, but great. So that's number 5 for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
My number 5 we talked about in episode 185, and that is Draft and Write Records from Inside Up Games and designer Bruno Michel. The way that this game works with the different tracks and how well they're integrated and working. You are trying to start up a band and perform and require add musicians and singers and technical people and promote yourself and do all of those type of things and move up the tracks and trigger bonuses, but it seems to work really efficiently and intuitively, and felt like and then the ability of combining a drafting game with a writing game, a roll and write or a flip and write game, really added an extra layer of interaction that usually isn't in those type of games. So that was a blast for me, Draft and Write Records.
Yeah, and I have it at 3, and we had crossover at 4 earlier with Skyrise. And the only thing I'll add in with Draft and Write Records, what's memorable for me with that game is in a lot of roll and writes, you have so many different maps because variability, you want it, right? And Draft and Write Records uses the same map. And in repeated plays, I really appreciated being able to know where things are at, and it helps me to make better, I would say more efficient decisions in the game. I don't feel like I'm slowing other people down.
Yeah.
I just absolutely love how it plays. And no 2 games are the same. and that's number 3 on my list. So, yep.
Awesome. All right, my number 4 was some people might get mad about this if you're a stickler on Board Game Geek, but Comic Hunters. We talked about that in 187. Released in the U.S. in 2024. Originally available.
Your list, Doug. Your list.
Originally available in Brazil, and as much as I tried to get it, finally came out from Spin Master and Arcane Wonders designer Robert Coelho.
Coolio?
Sure. It's a theme I love, Marvel, but the way that I love drafting games, and this one gives you several different ways to draft and select cards and make collections and uses the same cards as a currency. So you're acquiring comic books, but you're going to have to sell some of those comic books to keep the ones that you really want. And the way that all works together is just awesome. So that is my number 4. Again, episode 87. My number 3 is The Gang, which we talked about in episode 200 as the Spotlight. This is from Cosmos and designer John Cooper and Corey Heath. For me, this is a killer of the crew, a game that I love the idea of a cooperative trick-taking game, but just never worked for me at a table. And this
you're too smart with the people you're playing with, Doug.
Yeah, I disagree highly on that one. But The Gang taking Texas Hold'em poker and making it cooperative in a way that it takes the place of a game like The Mind. It takes the place of a game like Hanabi and The Crew and gets rid of all of those out of my collection. And I just need this one that scratches all the same itches for me. Great production and a lot of cool things going on. So that is The Gang, my number 3.
Yeah, I had it at 11, and it's so tough to, so it's right in an honorable mention. It could have easily been at 10 or 7. It's all the things that you said. Just that one hasn't worked for my family as well as it works for play groups, man. Like that game is awesome. I love that game. That's really good.
All right, what's number 2?
2. So I can guarantee we don't have crossover for my number 1 and 2 because I've only played them solo. This number 2 is the biggest surprise of the year for me. I talked about being a cynic with Wormspan. Well, number 2 is Slay the Spire, the board game. When this came out, I made fun of this, folks. Oh, really only to Doug because that's who I make jokes to about games.
List. Played games. I'm like, hey, when did you acquire this? And when are we getting it to the table together?
Story there. So I won't get too long because that could be a whole different school of gaming. But here's what I'll say. I fell pretty hard for this when we got a Switch a few years back. Like it is what's called a roguelite deck builder. And what I mean, and maybe this isn't canon to roguelite, but when you lose and you have to start over. And so you're going through 3 acts, and as you make your way towards the big boss, you're like, okay, I'm one away from the big boss. All of a sudden you get the worst card draws in the world, and you're like, wait, these aren't synergized at all. Well, I could probably afford to lose 2 health here, right? Because I'll still have 5. I'll be okay. But you don't get health back very easily. And next thing you know, you lost before you even got to the big boss. And nobody else knows. You just know, like, oh, why did I do that? And what Slay the Spire, the board game, does, what I think it will do, because I haven't played with other humans yet, but I did a little two-handed solo more than once. It takes a one-person solo video game with straight-up board game deck-building mechanics and brings in a cooperative nature to it in a way that you can one-shot it and be done in an hour, or you could take the whole day and say, this is what we're doing today. The flexibility in that game. And what brought me to it was we stood in line. We were waiting to get into Gen Con just to have that experience to storm the doors on one day. And a person was there to pick it up for their friend. And then when I dug in, the designer, Gary Dwortsky, the lead designer, he was a designer on a game that I'd been trying to get, Imperium the Contention, another deck builder that was super hard to get and way too much money. And so I got in on the pre-order on it, and it arrived not that long ago, like November-ish, but I didn't say anything to you because I wanted to go through it all to be like, is this the real deal or not? I've kind of been waiting for this episode to let you know, like, this is fantastic. I love a deck builder. I'm very biased. You give me Clank, you give me any deck builder, I'm going to have fun at the table. But there's something to Slay the Spire that they just got it right, man. They really got it right with battling those villains is a ton of fun.
Withholding information from me.
Well, you gotta have some stuff. Gotta bring some joy.
Game I'm interested in playing. He's had it for 2 months.
Well,
doesn't
good.
want to play
Now
it
you know
with
who's
me.
got it. Yeah. But some of it, with the timing, the win. So we'll make it happen. I have it. It's sitting behind me.
My number 2, Michael talked about already. That was from episode 188. That's Let's Go to Japan. This hits all my buttons of efficiency and planning and set collection and doing points. If you want more information, go back to episode 188. Phenomenal game. Let's Go to Japan.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just Contention Games did Slay the Spire. Sorry, we like to call out the publishers and the designer. Now, although Doug just made it clear that he wants to play, great. We will play that at some point. Likely in 2025, maybe not till 2026. That's okay. It's here, and it's awesome. This is a game that, unfortunately, Doug and I will probably never play because I think this is likely a 3.5 to 4 hour game. Although Board Game Geek doesn't say so. This was one of my most anticipated games. This is Andromeda's Edge. It's the follow-up to Dwellings of Eldervale, designed by Luke Laurie and Maximus Laurie, father-son duo, art by Sergio Chavez, publisher Cardboard Alchemy. Got to give Peter Vaughn a shout out too because he's development and all things social media for that game. But this one was also a 10 for me. Same with Slay the Spire. They were my 2 10s of the year. Just a fantastic game that I thought from how everything was talked about with the crowdfunding that it would streamline Dwellings of Eldervale and give it a space theme. Oh my goodness. It added on so much to that game where it's like, wait. You mean Dwellings of Eldervale that is a junior version to this? like you're in space and you've got these ships. I've got 3 logged plays and how many hours? Like 8 hours into this game in those 3 logged plays. I might only play it solo because I do think, and as I've listened to a few other shows talk about it, I was glad to hear that it's not the 80 to 160 minutes that Board Game Geek claims it to be. And I'm on the fan club for Andromeda's Edge, so I know people talk about how to get it down, this or that, or if you play just the 50 point end. But I'm not really doing a great job of describing the game because there's so much to it. I think perhaps we can throw it into a Spotlight episode if we haven't done it already. I don't think we have. One that I absolutely love, one that I don't really feel comfortable taking to a convention, though, either, because I think it's going to run into that 4 hour window if you're playing. The teach and the setup is an hour. Starting up that game is an hour. So right there's an hour. Okay, so now if we have 3.5 hours, I don't know quite where it's going to fit. But boy, I love it. So for me, that will be a solo Saturday event at least once or twice a year. That's cool. My game of the year.
All right, my game of the year is Rock Hard 1977.
I knew it.
Published by DeVere and designer Jackie Fox. This one is a phenomenal game of combining those storytelling elements and theme. This game is dripping with theme, and the actions and the things that you are doing make this game so much easier to teach for a game that is a little bit more on the complex side. But because everything is kind of tied together well, I feel like it's a really easy game to teach and get up and running. And we played it on our game day with a first-time player. Michael and I had played it before, and he won.
He
won.
He did.
Yeah. And it's like picked it up right away. And I think, sometimes people get all upset about, there's too much theme or things like that, and they want some of that abstract and just points and things like that, but the theme makes it so much easier to teach and get going. And this one is a great example of that. And every game of this that I've played, people, there's that element of role playing, which is a common theme of games that I like, where people are putting on characters. And those are the things that I remember about playing games.
Yeah.
I don't remember awesome point combos in turns. I remember people having bad luck of dice rolling and certain interactions.
Doug's character the last time we played had to roll for when he went to work. So Doug was not able to plan out where his job would be and fit everything else out. And you could just see it
every morning. It was
crushing
always
him because
in day.
he always had to work in the day. So then he couldn't get his record deals in his studios and get his passive income going as fast as he would like to. It was awesome.
And you just, the little stories that develop of
not able to go to work today, Doug.
Your manager and things like that. Just
gotta pay the manager.
Really, really great game. Rock Hard 1977.
Doug, would you go out on a limb and say that this game really might have changed you a little bit, like in the hobby and as a gamer, just with the quality of it and how big of a hit it was for you at the time that you played it? I feel like it raised the standard kind of excellence and some of those things for just you and your collection.
Probably, I would say it made me relook at some of the games this year were more transformative of what should stay and what should go, and kind of reevaluating my own collection and saying, this is really good, or this, when I talked about the gang, like, yes, this is a single game that's replacing 3 other games in my collection that I no longer need to have, and really some of these games started that trend of, if I have this game, why do I have this other one when I like this one better, and it's doing the things I like better? And Rock Hard was a good one of marrying Euro-style mechanisms with theme, and that is possible. There's been a little bit of feelers in that, especially like last year when you're looking at Distilled and Scarface, that there are those heavy theme games. This one put it over the edge of having just as much fun with the theme and the environment of the game, the world of the game, as it did with the mechanisms.
Yeah.
And so that was a big marriage. Usually it's either on one side or the other, and this one was really 50-50 in the middle, both of them at that level of storytelling and mechanisms.
Any honorable mention that we haven't discussed?
I've got them, but I mean,
was Spotlight an honorable mention for you?
Yes.
I figured that would be. And I'm just going to rattle off 3 quick ones, won't say anything about it, but Cities was really hard for me not to put on the list. Just absolutely love it. It was Game of the Week, Phil Walker Harding and Dr. Stephen Finn. Gnome Hollow is another one that I was like, how is this not in my top 10? A game from a first-time designer and published by The Op that I really enjoyed. And then finally, probably one of the bigger surprises for me was Metro Runner. We had the designer on, local designer, back in episode 174. That's published by Thunderworks Games. Stephen Kerr's the designer. Got to play it a few times and got to play it at Gamehole Con by him. And huge surprise at that. And that's one that I think you might hear more about in later episodes if we're able to dive into it, because there's something there.
Yeah. No, great games, and just there's a lot of good games, and we covered a lot of them throughout the year. So go back and listen to some of those episodes of ones that made the list and didn't make the list. But if we talked about them and they were Game of the Week, they were good to us. So subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on X at GameSchoolerU. Again, our Discord is gameschooler.com/Discord. We'd love to have you there. Next week, we're going to be talking about Link City. We're going to be revisiting our anticipated games from 2024. And we're going to be talking about some games from 2024 we still want to play. So we'll look forward to seeing you then. Thank you so much for spending the last hour or so with us. We truly appreciate it.
Now get out there and keep gaming.